everyone, I'm Stephanie Kolodziej, and I'm here at the Itron Inspire event in beautiful San Antonio, Texas. And I'm joined here today with Torrey Cardinalli, Managing Director of Enterprise Sale at Verizon Global Enterprise. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we're here today. We want to talk a little bit more about what exactly private networks are and why they're so important to utilities right now.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this. Private networks represent the next era of networking generations from cellular wireless providers. So today, everybody's familiar with public wireless networks. This is the idea of your phone working. In those networks, you don't get to choose where the towers go. You don't get to understand how they perform, and you don't get to set certain parameters for how the network operates. So what private networks do is they bring a lot more visibility and control to utilities and to enterprises, not just domestically, but also across the world and different technology types. And so with more visibility and control, utilities and other enterprises can get a better understanding of how their network's performing, make changes more dynamically, faster, and make sure that their network and ultimately the grid is more resilient, more reliable, safer, and more efficient with more efficient networking technologies.
Yeah, well, I'd have to imagine it's a better situation for cybersecurity threats as well if it's private, right?
It certainly is. Cellular networks operate off of standards bodies that are defined globally. So you have things like mutual authentication and dual encryption, and these things make for more secure networks, which, as everybody knows, is a growing threat to utilities. And in fact, ransomware attacks in the last 2 years have grown 50% among utilities. And now ransomware attacks in utilities make up 10% of ransomware attacks across the world annually. So it's a growing threat, and having more secure networks is a big part of operating.
It's really important.
Productively.
Yeah, absolutely. So do private networks completely replace existing utility networks, or is it an addition to?
No, utilities will use a variety of networks. One of the most common is Wi-Fi, for example. Wi-Fi is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and it makes for excellent network topology in places like especially carpeted environments, where offices, certain facilities, administrative. But what you don't see Wi-Fi used a lot of the time in is outdoor applications. When was the last time you were on a Wi-Fi network outdoors, right? There are limitations of Wi-Fi in certain environments, particularly industrial environments, critical infrastructure environments, outdoor environments. And so Wi-Fi will always be a tool in the kit, and it continues to get better. But there are more scalable solutions like private networks that use cellular that will cut down on the amount of access points that you need to deploy to make an outdoor network. And they also cut back on the amount of refresh cycles that you have to do, like in the case of Wi-Fi, refreshing equipment every 3 years, every 5 years. That's a lot more frequent cycle than, say, a cellular network where we refresh networking equipment every perhaps 10 years. Sure. So the cost economics are there, but especially in the period we're in right now, you'll see both of these technologies and others as well, present in the networking architecture of utilities.
Sure, yeah, makes sense. What would be the major benefits for utilities, whether or not they're small, municipalities or larger IOUs even, of deploying these types of private networks?
That's a great distinction, because you don't have to be a really large utility to deploy private wireless networks. Some of the major benefits are the cost. I mentioned earlier the amount of access points to deploy a network over a certain square footage, let's say it's a square mile.
Which is not a lot of space, right?
It's a lot of space, but it takes a lot of equipment to build a network that large that has good speed and bandwidth, and so cost is a major factor. Visibility in the sense that you can see which devices are performing, control in the sense that you can prioritize which devices have, say, greater access to the network, or at certain times of peak network activity, we give our substations and our SCADA devices and other types of critical infrastructure priority to operate on a private network, so you get that control along with it. And then one of the things we understand quite well at Verizon is that it may not be just the utility who wants to take advantage of this network. You may want to enable partners to access it and have it kind of work and feel like a regular public network. And so utilities have the option to configure it. So you get both the critical private network that you need and the security that goes with that. And then you also get a public wireless network that can be turned on or off as the enterprise sees fit. So you get more flexibility, better cost, better visibility, better control. And you see evolution of these networks too. What utilities need today is not what they'll need tomorrow. And so you see these have the scalability to reach future network requirements, as time goes on. So
yeah, I mean, the future's changing so rapidly, right? The industry's changing and everything needs to be connected these days. So
connected, faster, cheaper, with a better experience, that's more reliable, and we're listening to these requirements.
Yeah, that's great. So what other industries other than utilities are really adopting these types of networks? There must be others.
There's a lot of others. Yeah. Everybody's doing it there's some similar ways, and there's a lot of differences in the way that companies are doing it too. With regard to utilities, we're seeing this adopted mostly in large outdoor industrial spaces. So if you think about like generation sites, where power is created, these are very important sites. These are some of the first to start to adopt this architecture alongside existing network, like Wi-Fi and such. We're seeing it in smaller use applications, like putting it in substations, just one radio in substations to be able to provide either a primary or secondary high-speed connectivity path for substations. And then outside of utilities, we're seeing this in, like I said, other industrial-related use cases. So there's a large port, the Associated British Ports in the UK. They do over 600,000 vehicle imports and exports. They do over 1.2 billion cruise ship passengers. And if you've ever been to one of these ports, they're large and expansive, and there's metalworks and vehicles and cargo bins and things, and it's really hard to expect a public network to serve those facilities. And so Associated British Ports partner with us, and we put this network in. It's actually a private wireless network that's also 5G. So now their employees, their cruise ship passengers, their partners, everybody across this entire port is connected with high-speed connectivity. And again, one of the advantages of an outdoor private cellular network is the ability to start using autonomous vehicles and other types of robotics that will, improve efficiency in the port, whether they're manned or unmanned, machines and such. So a really cool application, but we're seeing this in oil refineries. We're seeing still a lot of places where maybe today's public networks don't reach or don't serve as well.
Sure. It sounds like where there's like potentially high concentration of devices and people, it's really where these networks can really be beneficial.
You got it, especially if this is a high concentration in an area where there's profit generation or there's criticality like in the sense of keeping the lights on for residents. So there's a lot of scenarios, but the more critical they are, the more the need for just better, more flexible, new types of networks.
That's great. That's great. It's awesome. So this is my first time at Itron Inspire, but you've been coming for a few years now. What would you say you're most looking forward to while you're here?
Learning. It's always learning. It's always connecting with some of the key leaders, thought leaders in this space. Tom Dietrich, the CEO of Itron, gave an excellent keynote this morning. He talked about the need to act differently. He talked about the growing pressure on from regulators, from bad actors in the cyberspace, from renewable requirements and goals for 2025 and 2030 and state-by-state regulations. So there's just a lot of pressure, and it helps to be together in an area with like-minded folks who are solving the same problems for utilities and for residents, across the country. So it's fun to be a part of this. We've participated and sponsored the event multiple years running, and Verizon as a company will remain invested in utilities alongside utilities, helping just make sure that where there are needs, Verizon's a partner to these utilities. So
that's great. Well, it's been great to spend some time with you, Torrey. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again later.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.